Welcome to the Agency Insider Show, where we dive into the world of marketing, strategy, and digital transformation with industry leaders. I'm Navneet Kaushal, and today we have an exciting guest, Jono Alderson. For those unfamiliar with Jono, he's a leading expert in technical SEO and digital strategies. He worked with some of the biggest names in the industry, including one of our favorite plugins, Yoast, and today he'll be sharing insights on SEO, AI, and the future of digital marketing. Jono, welcome to the show today. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm great. Just saying it's unseasonably nice today, so I'm glad I'm cooped up inside, away from the sun and the nice weather. No, this is great. Thanks, thanks again. It'll be fun.
Okay. And of course, I'm thrilled to have you here. Before we dive into the technical topics, could you share a bit about your journey and current role and recent projects you are working on?
Yeah, certainly. So I started out as a bedroom web developer, what feels like 100 years ago now, building websites for little small businesses like local bakeries and butchers and insurance firms and stuff. And I got a bit obsessed about what does perfect look like. So as a web developer nerd playing with HTML, quite early on, there was some really interesting challenges where you go, okay, what order should these tags be in? And what does a good alt attribute look like? And what does this thing do exactly? And how does this work? And then it turns out accidentally what I was doing was technical SEO before I'd even really heard of it and had a name for it. So that was cool. And then I fell from there into the world of agencies. So I spent a long time working for agencies and grew teams around me, was very successful, but learned about business and consultancy and constraints and all the kind of moving parts that go with that. So perfect is hard, right? And perfect is even harder when you've got clients who expect monthly reports and deliverables and things. So yeah, did that for a bit, hopped around a bit, worked at some tool vendors, played with some big data, was into machine learning before it was AI and cool. And then, yeah, spent 5 years at Yoast running the kind of what does SEO for Yoast look like? What's the product roadmap? What should we be building the 13, 14 million websites running Yoast SEO? Based on where SEO is going to be in 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years from now, and trying to work out both technically what does perfect look like for that at scale, but also what's the direction of travel? What is Google going to be in a few years? What tools do people need? What does doing SEO look like and mean for most average users? So yeah, super interesting journey. I'm still a web developer at heart, and I'm deeply into tech and PHP and JavaScript and databases and code, but also, yeah, I think the bigger challenges that many businesses have are people and politics and structures and priorities and finite resources and budgets and those and positioning. And I'm sure we'll talk about like marketing in general. Yeah, it's a bit of both ends of the spectrum. So super exciting.
Okay. Right. So technical SEO is something which is very intriguing and a lot of people overlook. I've seen across, I myself love doing technical SEO, putting it SOPs. But yes, we're going to talk more about that as well. So, of course, you've been in an SEO industry for quite some time. How many years you've been in the industry now?
I've lost count. I think definitely since 2006, maybe thereabouts. So yeah, going on nearly 20 years. Which, yeah, that's
20 years. Right.
Wow.
I know the SEO has changed a lot. I've been this in the industry since 2002. So yes, things have changed. But how has your approach to SEO changed over the years? And what misconception do you think agencies are still holding to despite all the changes or the roller coaster rides we have been through in recent years?
Yeah, interesting. I don't think my core approach has changed a lot. I think some of the tactics and some of the day-to-day prioritization has changed, but the core principles I think still hold true, which is that Google or Bing or whoever are essentially going to judge your website and your web pages on whether this is the best thing for their users. And the best way that you can strategically make sure that that is the case is by making the best thing for their users. So creating unique, inherently valuable resources by being the kind of brand that people would expect to see when they search, by having a reputation, by being all those good things, which now are very trendy because EAT is a thing. And obviously it's getting harder to do conventional tactics like link building and content, etc. But yeah, I think the heart of it still makes sense. That the core approach is provide the best resources and results for Google's users.
Right. And opinion, of course, you've been in this industry for almost 20 years. What is been the most underutilized SEO strategies that agency should be paying more attention in this year and the coming year?
I missed the other part of your first question. So I'm going to hop back about what misconceptions agencies hold on to, because
I'll repeat my question.
Sure.
So what I'm saying, what is the most underutilized SEO strategies which you see these days?
I think actually focusing on product market fit. So a lot of brands and websites and companies and agencies will start out and they'll say, we're going to do some keyword research. We're going to look at search volumes and current rankings and competitors. We're going to build them into some kind of spreadsheet, put them all in order, and then start either producing or optimizing content and trying to do slightly better than our competitors so that we outrank them. And nowhere at the beginning of this process has anybody said, actually, let's do some audience research and let's actually speak to potential customers in our space. Let's understand what the kind of problems these users have, and not just at the point of purchase. I think critically the point that a lot of people aren't doing is saying, let's understand the complex buying journeys that these people go on for considered purchases, and say 6 months before you clicked add to cart, what were the kind of questions you had? What were you unsure about? What frustrated you? What annoyed you? And what triggered that start of those research processes? And then to be saying, okay, how do we help those people? How do we create or commission content and optimize keywords and provide resources that target people who are on those journeys, rather than just fighting for these kind of bottom of the funnel keywords where we're all putting all of our efforts and energy and yet all bun fighting and not actually helping users who are higher up the funnel. So yeah, everyone's missing that side.
Right. So it's like the use. Most of the time, the SEO agencies forget it's always the user first.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
So of course, we often hear about the death of SEO. I've been hearing it every year. I've been into a couple of sessions where I spoke why it's not. So I mean, as someone like you who've been deeply involved in the field, what's your take on the future of SEO, especially for the agencies? Is it gonna remain same? Are SEO agencies gonna be like just living in silo doing SEO agency, or what do we need to do now?
So I don't think it's dead, but I think it continues. Available tactics set reduces. So once upon a time, 20 years ago, you're going to do some SEO. We're going to say, okay, we're going to do some stuff with some keywords. We're going to go get some links. We're going to do some blog comments. We're going to do an infographic. We're going to do like 100 things you can do. And then each year that goes by, there are 10 fewer. There's 90 things you can do. There are 80 things you can do. Blog comments aren't a thing anymore. Infographics aren't a thing anymore. That list gets shorter and shorter. And now it's super short, because the kind of content that Google wants to rank is the kind of stuff that is authentic, genuinely useful, unique, inherently valuable, etc. And those things are hard to do if you're an agency, because they're very closely tied to the business, its values, its products, its services. The further away from, if you're not sat physically in that business and touching and experiencing these, it's super hard. So the role of agency has to change. And this isn't a new thing. I think there's a journey from being external resource that you can outsource production to, not really a thing anymore. I think now there's much more of a space for consultative expertise. And there's a few things agencies can definitely do there, which definitely isn't dead and will continue to be not dead, which is understand the kinds of things, the kind of problems that Google is looking to solve for its users. So people working inside businesses and in-house don't have the breadth of experience and visibility that people in agencies have to see, okay, here are the trends, here are the patterns, here's the kinds of challenges that we see, here's what we think Google's looking for, here's what we should do. And then the other thing that agencies do nicely and will continue to is breed talent. They are where super smart people cut their teeth, get their first jobs, start thinking differently. So you can think outside the box. You can do things that maybe your slower, more established competitors can't. So there's definitely a role for agencies, but it's not going to be quantified deliverables per month. I don't think there's a role for agencies where clients say, make us 20 blog posts a month or get 100 links, or whatever those are, because those things are quite a way away from that inherent core value proposition, which is what Google's looking to pick. So yeah, it gets harder to be a commodity agency, but as a skill, as a trusted partner, as a set of expertise, yeah, there's definitely a future.
So right, so you just need to differentiate yourself, not just being a commodity out there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. All right. So let's jump into something which is favorite to you, and of course we are excited to have more knowledge on technical SEO. So right, you've been known for your technical SEO expertise. Now, what are some of the most overlooked technical SEO fundamentals that businesses miss, and why are they so crucial?
I think a lot of businesses don't look at their websites and think about them in terms of URLs. They think about pages and products and blog posts, and that makes complete sense because that's how companies are organized and look at these things. But Google and Bing, etc., just see a bunch of URLs. And when you take a step back and you say, actually, have we really critically evaluated every single one of these URLs and said, should this be indexable? Should it be crawlable? Where should it canonicalize to? Should it redirect? Is it inherently good and useful? And when you start asking those questions, you see very quickly things like, I don't know, this blog has a whole bunch of tag pages that are quite similar, that have 2 blog posts in them that don't really add value. Okay, so these probably shouldn't be indexed. Or you see, okay, there's a article from 2008 about some special offer that ran that obviously has now expired. Why is this still indexed? And many, many websites and brands don't apply that level of attention to detail to say for every single URL on this domain, is it good? Should we keep it? Should we get rid? How are we managing this? And that's super important because increasingly those bad URLs or those stale pages or those poor experiences now impact all the good ones. And that's not just about crawl budget. It's about Google looking at that whole set of URLs and saying, yeah, you've got a few really good product pages. Look, there's 1,000 RSS feeds and empty tag pages and other bits of garbage. And users who land on those and see them have a bad experience. And that impacts not just SEO directly, but all sorts of other things like their propensity to like and share and tweet and whatever else. Yeah, really paying attention to detail for every URL is the big thing that makes the difference.
So of course, you've seen a lot of companies making common technical SEO mistakes. Some of them you listed. So what are some of the more frequent errors you encounter, and how they can be avoided?
I see loads of people just who have lots of broken links, for example, and that's a content governance thing. Like over time, change and internal structures change and pages get deleted. Then also the external places you link to, their websites change and get deleted. I think not enough companies or agencies take the resource to say, we will continually review all of this content and make sure it's still up to date, that all these links still work, that everything makes sense, that if we're deleting stuff, that we've got a strategy for where we redirect stuff to. And just not allowing websites to fall into that kind of state of disrepair. I think, yeah, lots of people don't do that attention to detail.
Okay. Yes, I agree to that. I mean, a lot of people just ignore. I've seen a lot of sites getting redesigned and forgetting the basics of
Yeah.
pages are lost, the URLs are lost, and then they come back after some month and blame it on the SEO.
Yeah, and they're constantly having to start again and build up that lost equity for sure. Yeah, when you do this right, it just goes over time. But so many people, yeah, they missed it.
Right. Now, for a larger website, crawl budget is a major concern. Could you explain how business can optimize their crawl budget effectively? And of course, for the listeners for whom crawl budget look like an alien word, so if you can explain what budget is.
Yeah. So the good news is most sites won't need to worry about this. But if you've got a huge site that has millions of URLs, then at some point it's something you might want to think about. So this is an oversimplification, but the general principle is Google or Bing, etc., are only going to spend so much time and energy looking at your website. And the bigger the brand you are and the more well-known and popular you are, the more energy they might spend. But if you've got 30 trillion pages, they're probably not going to get to them all. And actually, even some kind of medium-sized sites might want to think about this, because if you haven't done that kind of housekeeping and attention to detail, it might turn out that, I don't know, say you're an e-commerce site and you've got categories and filters. So I've got T-shirts in red and blue and green and pink and yellow, and each of those is available in large and medium and small and extra large, and each of them is available in a different cut, etc. Suddenly that one T-shirt is 200 URLs. And if I've got 1,000 T-shirts, each of which is 200 URLs, you're expecting a lot from Google to say, visit every single one of these and then evaluate it and then maybe canonicalize it, maybe yada, yada, yada. So really what you need to be doing, it's the same answer, is look at every single URL on your site. Not only is this good or bad, and should it be no indexed, etc., but should Google be crawling it at all? And should they be able to find it? And should it be public? Do we need to block access to this? Now, again, you only really need to worry about this if you've got a huge number of URLs. And looking at places like Google Search Console's crawl data report, it's buried in the settings section somewhere, might be quite a good indicator as to whether or not you need to care about this. You can get statistics on how many URLs are they requesting, of what type, and are there any problems. The other part of this is they're not just looking at the number of URLs, it's about the resource they're expending. So page speed becomes really important. Because if you've got 1 million pages and all of them are 100 megabyte images and full of JavaScript, Google's got a lot less firepower to go through all of those. So shaving off kilobytes and making pages faster and zipping things and removing overheads can help as well. Even if you've got a lot of pages, making them more streamlined can mean Google gets to more of them. Yeah, it's about making it as easy as possible to encourage Google to not get lost and waste time in the depths of URLs that it doesn't need to.
So you mentioned pages having just like a t-shirt, small size, medium size, large size. So when, I mean, this is common e-commerce sites issues when they have same product but different URLs, unique different URLs for sizes or for colors. So what is your best, what is your recommendation when somebody has these type of pages? Do they canonicalize? Do they block the other URLs or other product pages? What is your recommendation?
It's super interesting because that's going to depend on the business and its priorities in the market. So t-shirts are a really good example because there's definitely search volume and user intent for different colors and different sizes. So you really do want all of those indexed, but maybe not every combination. So I don't know how many people are searching for large red crew cut t-shirts. There's definitely search volume for red, definitely search volume for large. So you've got to do the research and evaluate how deep and how specific does it make sense to go? And can we make that page super useful, super valuable, have content describing all of it in a way that's useful to users? Can't do that for 1 million pages. That's quite hard. So you could decide where that line is. And then you say, okay, we index color, we index size, but we canonicalize in color plus size. And we don't want Google crawling anything that's got 5 different parameters. So yeah, I would start working out where that line is based on the combination of where is there opportunity and what can you resource. And if you can't write 1 million great pages, I don't know who can, then maybe start with 10, maybe start with 100, work out that overlap.
Okay, so that means block other pages till then, or keep them canonicalized? What should be the solution?
Canonicalizing is interesting because if the pages aren't the same, then you probably shouldn't canonicalize them. And a red t-shirt isn't necessarily the same as a blue t-shirt. So again, it's going to depend. Some versions are going to be this like a toggle that filters on delivery information, shipping information. It's probably the same products and they're probably the same page, but colors definitely aren't. So again, it's going to depend on, can you make a genuinely useful page here that's going to meet the needs of the audience? If you can't, then yeah, maybe you canonicalize it to something similar, the same. Maybe you redirect it. Well, you don't redirect it if you want it open, but maybe you block it entirely depending on the filters. It's going to depend a lot on your architecture as well, but essentially manage it and do the same kind of decision making you'd make for any other content. Is this good? Should it be indexed? Should it be crawlable? Should it be canonicalized? It's no different to any other type of page or URL or blog post, whatever. Pages are pages.
Right. Now, of course, what you explained, many agencies for that matter say struggles explaining technical SEO to clients because, of course, half of the customers, I mean, will not implement anything technical and then they say, where are my rankings?
Yeah, all the time.
I had a call today with a client and that's what he says. Where are my rankings? I said, you have not implemented anything.
Yeah, I've given you a to-do list. Yeah.
And the second question came, then what am I paying you for?
Yeah. I think technical SEO is super tricky in that regard because when I talk about it, I use the word quality because increasingly it feels like so close to what it is. So much of technical SEO is just web standards. It's like build a good website. So things like, sorry, go on. So things like redirects. They're an SEO thing because SEOs care about them, but they're a normal fundamental part of how websites work. And you go back as far as the very genesis of the internet. There are ideas that when pages are deleted, they should probably redirect somewhere. You look at things like alt attributes for images. Yes, there's something SEO cares about. They're a huge part of accessibility and making sure that people who have alternate ways of accessing page content can still consume your information. So much of technical SEO is just web standards. And when you start to, you look at it that way, then you start to get some really nice analogies because you can say it's not really different from thinking about a brick and mortar store. If I walk into a shop on the high street and there's a leaking pipe and it's really hard to climb over stuff and the signs all point to dead ends and there's nobody I can find to help me and the ceiling is broken in places and there are holes in the floor and all these other things, this is analogous to technical SEO and website quality. The challenge then of getting stuff done is that it's not that visceral and tangible in the way that it is in the real world. And most websites are built on the premise of what's the most we can get as quickly and cheaply as possible. And if people don't see these pain points and experience them, then they're not incentivized to really do anything about them. That's why we have the same problem with accessibility, with usability, with security, with performance. All of these things are just symptoms of not having built something that's very good. So the one trick I use that I think is the only way you can fix this is make them feel the pain, is show them what those interactions for users look like. Run surveys, find people who will say, this was confusing, I didn't like this, I was annoyed trying to use this checkout. And then get them to use it, get them to navigate around the site. And then when it takes 6 seconds for the page to load and the image is broken and they end up on a 404 page, they go, oh, that's not very good. You go, yeah, it's not very good. Here's the thing on the checklist I sent where we need to fix this. So yeah, you've got to make it hurt. You've got to make it as real as issues in a real life store would be. They've got to feel it and understand it that way. And that's quite alien for most people.
So for example, a lot of sites these days are built on the React framework, where, of course, the ring is a bigger problem. And when you talk to the developer, they refuse to, first of all, acknowledge it. They say that this is not a ranking factor. Then you go ahead and show them Google Cache blank. This is what Google is caching. And then they come up and say that's not possible. So how do you overcome these type of things when the marketing team gets involved and the developer gets involved? So how do you resolve these? I'm sure you must be getting a lot of these.
Yeah, all the time. So many of the sites I look at have exactly that symptom. They were built by somebody who didn't know what they didn't know, and they've used whatever today's fancy JavaScript framework is, and it looks sleek, but it takes 20 seconds to load. Google can't see any of it, and it's super unintuitive and broken in 1,000 ways. It's really, really hard to go to war with developers in those kinds of situations, because you're saying that their child is ugly. You're saying that the thing that they've just spent a year working on is wrong. And you're saying, do it my way, when that's going to be more work. And so all of this is inherently combative and goes badly. I think you need to talk to the grown-ups. You need to talk to the CEO or the VPs or the whoever's in charge and say, okay, look, we have a technology problem, we have an accessibility problem. We're not going to be able to fix this overnight because it's going to be a huge amount of work to undo everything that's been done, but we need to be grown-ups about this. I think there are so many businesses where those developers essentially end up in charge because they hold all the power and get to decide what gets done and what doesn't. You can't win with that. So you need to find the adults and say, actually, we need to have budget, we need to have resource, we need to prioritize. And then they can say down to the development people, okay, this is our priority. We're going to spend so much time in doing this. You have to listen to the SEO agency because it's important for our revenue, etc. You can't win that fight directly. You just end up making enemies. So much of SEO advice says, okay, try and make friends with them, try and bribe them, buy them beers, buy them cake. And that can work for tactical things. You can then get tickets prioritized, but it doesn't scale, and it means you never really get to address those kind of architectural level issues. So yeah, go over their heads, get buy-in from the CMO that there's stuff that needs to change. Which is hard as well, but it's less hard than spending a year butting heads of developers.
Right. Now, of course, with the rise of AI-generated content, how do you think technical SEO will evolve to ensure content quality and relevance, or they are not connected?
I think they might be connected a little bit. I think one of the things that Google and the other search engines are going to have to do is get much better at deciding what they crawl and index based on quality levels and whether something looks like it's garbage AI or not. We already see this happening. We see a lot of conversation in Twitter and Threads and Facebook and places with people who have kind of large scale sites where maybe once upon a time they were doing article marketing at scale, and now they're using more and more AI to go faster and bigger. And they are saying, Google's not indexing my content. I must have some kind of technical issue. I've got problems with the full budget. They're only indexing 10% of my articles. I suspect what's happening is Google are making better technical decisions on what does good look like, and that threshold is rising. And if that's the case, then technical SEO becomes maybe more important because it's one of the ways that you might manipulate core budget, right? We said earlier, you can go faster, you can make your page more efficient, you can maximize your internal linking. Maybe having a better technical site mitigates some of that a little bit. So that's one angle. I think maybe there's some other stuff as well, which I'm sure we'll come on to, but the role of things like structured data gets more and more important. I think increasingly our websites will need to cater not just to human visitors, but to bots and systems, and to act like databases of information. So at the moment, most of our audience are people who come and they look and they see red t-shirt, large. Half of our audience are robots who also need to come and understand that explicitly. And technical SEO and structured data and schema and web performance are all going to tie into how we convey that messaging. So yeah, even in a world where we're generating all our content with AI, or we're using it in workflows and we're auto creating media and stuff, I think having a robust website framework and making sure your platform can handle all of that and do it well is still going to be super important.
Okay, let's talk more about AI and content. I mean, of course, AI has been a major topic in SEO and of course with content marketing. In your view, how should business balances the use of AI with human elements in SEO and content creation?
I think most content creation in SEO at the moment is probably not great. Like a lot of it is just here's a list of keywords, produce some articles, and we've all got very excited because with AI we can do that faster and we can do it more cheaply and more efficiently, and we can remove the need for humans to be overseeing it. Right, I think that's the wrong direction. You look at where Google's going, you look at the rise of their demand for quality and authorship and all the EEAT stuff. I think you really want a human in the driving seat, and where the best content can definitely be expert humans using AI systems. So where AI can be really good, I think there's two key areas. One is summarizing. So if I've got, I don't know, I'm an expert in donuts and I want to create a great piece of content about donuts, there's a research process that goes into that. Well, I want to go and read the 100 best things that have ever been written. I want to go read about the guy who invented donuts on Wikipedia. I want to go and spend hours and hours consuming all this information. And then I want to boil all that down to some key points and some interesting ideas. That bit AI can be really good at. Feed it huge amounts of information and say, here are some ideas. Here's some stuff I'm looking to find. Find some unexpected correlations with the weather in Germany. Tell me how it affected the stock market. All these kinds of things to get to interesting information quickly. That as an expert in the pilot seat using AI to go, what about this? What happens if I merge it with this data set? What about only on Tuesday? Like that's really powerful. So you do that. The other half is then expanding back out and going, okay, now I want to explore these points. What haven't I thought about? Is this point interesting? Does this make sense? Have I made sure that I'm catering to the right kind of audience and really using it as a kind of sense check and an editor? I think that's really powerful as well. So the crunch stuff down and then help me build it back up in a way that's good. I don't think there's much room for just generate me a 500-word article about this keyword because everyone can do that. And your competitors can do that, and they already are, and they can do 1,000 a day. And as we've said, Google are already getting better and better at spotting that and ignoring it. So yeah, there's a really nice role for experts using it to go faster and better, but I don't think scale production is the answer to any of the problems we have.
But can you use AI for improving content creation, or is that also not a fair use case?
Yeah, definitely. But I think not just the conventional get me a list of keywords, write an article. I think you can use it as a muse to explore and bounce ideas. You can go, I don't know what to write next. Here are some vague ideas I've got and some bullet points. Help me extract a story from these. And I do this quite often. I write a newsletter for a company called Systrix, and every month I have to do a think piece. And I'll sit down for a bit and I'll come up with a few vague ideas and I'll have some bullet points that are maybe connected and they'll start to come together. Then I put it in ChatGPT or Claude and I say, okay, here is the genesis of an idea. I'm not sure it's good. I'm not sure it's interesting. I don't think that this bit doesn't flow. Can you help me turn this into something? And what it helps me get to is then, okay, now I have something that's 90% of the way, that's still my ideas, that's still original. I'm going to rewrite the stuff it writes because it reads like it was written by a robot, but it will help me stitch that thing together. And it overcomes that fear of a blank canvas and that I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do. That's really helpful, definitely.
Definitely. So what are your favorite tools for this AI creation? Not exactly creation, but for bouncing these ideas. What are your favorite?
I really like ChatGPT. Yeah, I've played with a few others. There's pros and cons to all of them. I think ChatGPT's latest one, is it GPT 4.0 mini? Really nice for this sort of thing, partially because of the speed. I can think in real time and explore and bounce ideas backward and forth with it. And I can say, no, that looks too formal. That's gone in the wrong direction. I don't agree with this point. What if, and the flow is really nice. Just to kind of, it's like you're talking to an expert, but you can do it really, really quickly. Really nice. Yeah.
So it's funny when you compare it to Gemini. Gemini sometimes goes so way off. It reminds it reminds me the time when you would search anything on Yahoo or Microsoft, and the kind of results they give compared to Google. Now it's completely the opposite. So Google looks like the Bing of yesterday, and ChatGPT looks like a.
Yeah, definitely. What a weird time.
Yes, so let's talk a little bit about structured data and site speed. Of course, I was going through your earlier videos as well. Now, an interesting concept you have discussed in the past is the idea of marketing to machines with structured data. So could you explain what this means and why structured data is becoming so vital in SEO today?
Yeah, definitely. I can try. I think a lot of marketing is about managing and crafting and controlling a narrative. Like the job of marketing is to manage how people, well, some discovery, but also to manage how people perceive and understand my thing and to convey that in the way that I want to. I want to control how people feel about my brand and my messaging and my content. So half the people visiting your website aren't people at all. They're robots, they're Bing, they're Google, they're my smart light bulbs, whatever. These things increasingly also need to understand my content, and they are scraping and extracting and guessing in a lot of cases, right? So a lot of these systems are pulling out bits of content and data and going, okay, this is a product page, this is the price, but they're getting bits wrong. It's not completely reliable. It's hard to do that at scale infinitely. Google and Bing and others increasingly are using this kind of data to power rich results in their search results. So things like star ratings in products, in price comparisons, in carousels of information, in calorie counts and recipes, in 100 other places. These widgets are powered by data that we put on our web pages. In order for them to do that reliably, which is super important for them, right? They don't want to show a wrong product. They don't want to show a wrong price. They want to get this right. In order to do that, we need to be explicit in the data we're giving them. So we use schema.org, which is a language, a syntax, a way of describing things and their properties. And we put that code in our web pages to say, this is an article written by Jono about donuts, published on this date that talks about that brand that has this donut that's on offer for this price. Makes sense? And Google can then evaluate that and say, okay, we understand all of the entities that you've just described. We know what they are and where they live. We understand the relationship between them. We're not saying that this page, Jono is a donut. We're not saying that Jono is selling that donut. We're saying that Jono has written an article about a company that sells it. Understanding those relationships is really key because they need to understand that in order to then run Google Merchant Center, show excellent map results, all those other things. So this stuff is really important. And there's been some interesting discussion, I know, off the record inside Google, off the record, we're recording, unofficially inside Google for a bit about whether AI can just replace all of this and whether it can be smart enough to just extract the right information from the page. And the answer seems to be no. Like AI can do a really good job of saying, this is a page about donuts. But what it's always going to lack is precision. It's never going to completely get right. This is an article about donuts by Jono, all those relationships and that nuance. So Google still rely on us putting that explanation into our code and into our content. And every month that goes by, we see more and more of this stuff coming out and evolving. There's been a whole bunch of new stuff recently in describing complex product relationships, like the t-shirt stuff we described earlier. This is a t-shirt that has these siblings and variants and brothers and sisters and variants, etc. And this one's on offer, but this one's not, and this one has a different shipping time. Conveying all of that to Google is super important. Now, e-commerce particularly, because I'm sure everyone has seen this kind of gradual trend of Google Merchant Center gradually creeping into Google's organic search results, right? Google looks more and more like Amazon. It's lists of products and comparisons. That stuff is being scraped increasingly from your web page, and Google are reading the schema in that, as are Facebook in Facebook Marketplace doing the same thing. When they're scraping and visiting your pages, they're extracting the structured data and the schema markup and using that to represent your products, your content, your blog posts, your recipes, your videos, whatever else. So this stuff is hugely important. And not a lot of people are doing it particularly well. They're getting the basics right, but they're not really describing all that nuance and relationship. So there's still opportunity here. If you've got big competitors who aren't doing a great job, yeah, you can definitely do better.
Okay. So for companies that are just beginning with structured data, what are some simple yet effective ways to implement it, and what immediate results can they expect? Of course, what are the schemas they must have as well?
Sure. So if you're on WordPress, I would look at one of the big WordPress plugins like Yoast, or if not, a Rank Math or one of the others. They all have a kind of basic foundation of schema, and I know because they copied mine. But that's a story for another day. Now, I would say one of the things that people overlook is if we're talking about the context of websites and web pages, which we presumably are, most sites can benefit immediately from implementing a network of an organization schema that says, here is the name of my company, here is the link to my logo, here is our policy pages, here's our phone number, here's our email address, etc. But then also a node about the website And there's quite often a difference, right? Sometimes it'll be the same thing, but sometimes the organization who runs the website is slightly different. So you want to say, here's where this is, here's what that is. And then the web page that you're on and the relationship between those three things is really powerful. You can say, this is a web page about cats on a website by Jono's Cat Company, which is an organization that has its headquarters over here, and here's its logo. And doing that just across your whole website is super powerful. And then it's very easy to go and add other things, like this is an article with an author. Here's my author page. Here's information about the person and their expertise and their qualifications. And here's a link to their threads and Twitter profiles, etc. Joining all of that up onto that initial structure is pretty easy. So yeah, I'd start there. A tool that people don't know about enough, classyschema.org, is made by an Australian SEO called Tony McCreath. It's a friend. Really nice way of visualizing all of this. One of the challenges with schema is it's dense code, right? It's lots of JavaScript, JSON markup. It's hard to look at and see and understand. Classyschema.org gives you a nice way where it visualizes it as a graph diagram. So you get nodes and the lines between them, and you can see the relationships. So really good for flagging errors. Yeah, really excellent.
What was the URL again?
Schema.org. I will share that there so you can pick that up afterwards. But yeah.
Okay. So can you spell that for our audience?
CLASSYSCHEMA.org. Classy schema. And there's a visualization page on there, which is really nice.
Okay, what I'll do I'll put this URL in the description of the podcast and video as well for our audience.
Nice. In terms of immediate results, I would use that and the rich results test from Google, and it will tell you what you're eligible for, whether you can get rich results for recipes, articles, videos, etc. You might not get them immediately, like being eligible isn't the same as getting them, but yeah, unlock that potential.
Okay, right. Now, with search algorithm evolving, how do you think the role of structured data will change in the next few years? I know you said AI cannot replace, but is there any way, any other way the structured data will change or evolve?
I think we'll just see more. We're still seeing Google quite regularly adding support for more types, but also updating their documentation and refining it. Last week, they changed a whole bunch of the wording around some of the organization markup. So they're still very much using this and seeing it as alive. I think that doesn't change. And I think as the web continues to change and evolve and fills up with garbage AI content, this might be one of the ways that we start to differentiate, because so much of where schema is really powerful is things like describing an author of an article and their reputation and expertise. And so much of the AI stuff won't have that, won't rely on it, or they'll lie about it and it'll be obvious and it'll be wrong. So I think doubling down on schema as a framework for saying, hi, we're real, we're authentic, we have expertise. This isn't just a blog post. This is a research piece by this expert over here who works for this company, who's got all this credibility. I think, yeah, the people doing good SEO and good content, this is only going to get more important as Google and others use it in part to validate, okay, this is legitimate, it's real, it's valuable. Maybe I might be very wrong. It might all go away. We might just automate it, but we'll see.
Okay. Okay. Now let's talk about site speed. How important do you think site speed is for SEO?
I think it's hugely important. I don't think it's a huge ranking factor. And I agree with all the people who say this doesn't move the needle on rankings. And if it does, it only does in, what's the terminology you use? Google, like extremely edge cases and when you're competing in the margins against other sites. I think that means people overlook two things. One is all of SEO is competing in the margins, right? The top 10 websites in any given niche or vertical are going to be competing extremely aggressive. They're all putting money and resource and budgets in. And if you can get one small advantage in one place, that might be enough to win. These gaps aren't necessarily huge, or maybe you need 10 small advantages, but why would you overlook one because it's small? Right. So there's a mindset thing there where this is always important. But I think more outside of that, I think speeding up your site does a whole bunch of second tier effect things. One is it improves user experience as a whole, which we know is indirectly a ranking factor, right? All of Google's extrapolated user behavior analysis, all of the stuff that the search quality guidelines look for, all of the needs met analysis, all of the EEAT stuff has an aspect in it of, did I get annoyed when I was using this thing? And if your site is slow, then you're annoying your users. It affects conversion rate, which is revenue through the door, which affects how much budget you get for SEO. And then the amount of budget you get for SEO determines how many people you can hire, how much you can give to agencies, how much content you can produce, which affects your rankings. The most significant thing I think it does is it forces you to critically evaluate not only your website, but your business. So why is your website slow? Nobody says, let's build a slow website. So something has gone wrong if your website is slow. And it's maybe an education gap, maybe it's a resources gap, maybe it's a prioritization gap. Maybe your CTO is just awful. Like maybe your developers don't know what they're doing. Maybe you've been prioritizing. All of these questions start to be really interesting because as you start to fix your site and make it fast, you have to answer them. Okay, it turns out that we don't have enough developers. It turns out that we built this thing a year ago and we never came back and we fixed the technical debt because we've been working on this silly project for the CMO over here. All of these things come out the woodwork. And then as you address those, you fix those things, you free up resource, everyone becomes happier, your website gets better, you start focusing in the right areas, and it can have a profound effect on organizations. So there's been companies where I've been brought in to do like site speed audits and speed up their site, and we've done that. But the actual impact has been they've reorganized teams, they've hired more people, they've unlocked budget, they've fixed legacy tech debt, they've moved platforms, all of these things. Yeah, speed unlocked power, definitely. Really, really cool.
Now, what are some of the tips for improving the speed of the website, and what are some of your favorite tools for that?
What do people get wrong? So I guess the best tip is find slow things and make them faster or remove them. Google's Chrome developer tools is really, really good for this. So on a Windows machine, you hit F12. I don't know what it is on a Mac, but you get into the inspector window, and then there's a network tab. And if you reload the page, you can get a waterfall report of here are all the things loaded, in what order, and what were they, how big were they, and how long did it take? And you don't have to be a technical wizard to say, it looks like that's an image. It's a JPEG. It was 6 megabytes, and it held everything else up. And then there's your plan, right? We go and we say, okay, this image needs to be smaller and it needs to not block all the other resources. And so much of speed optimization is just spotting either this thing is too big or this thing is holding up other things. And you can do both of those as a non-developer. Page Speed Insights is also really nice, obviously, the kind of official page speed testing tool, and that gives some good advice that covers this. GT Metrics is a good blend of both. So GT Metrics, you get all of your core web vitals and page speed insight stuff, but you also get the waterfall charts and it will spot you nice stuff. And then, I would start by just looking at those waterfall charts and saying, we're loading a lot of things. Do we really need all of these? Those things are big. And there's a few other categories. So we're loading things from other domains. That's always inherently slow. Google Fonts is a really big offender here. Even though Google Fonts itself is really fast, the act of your browser connecting to another host name is unavoidably slow. So just looking at those waterfall charts and saying big, slow, bad, blocking, and then going, okay, which of these is the worst thing? Let's go and talk to the developers, go in and try and fix those things. And so often it's just compress this image, move this JavaScript. Why are we loading that? We only need that on the contact page, and this is the home page. We don't need to load that at all. Why is this thing 6 megabytes? Yeah, most of the actual diagnosis is easy.
Okay. So let's talk. What are your favorite tools or plugin when it comes to the speed for WordPress? Are you a fan of tools like Nitro?
I really like NitroPack. I know the team there really well. I know they had an interesting reputation initially because they got a load of bad press because they were, I think quite cleverly, deferring all JavaScript on the page until you move your mouse, which actually could, in many cases, can be a really good user experience. I think it's super smart. It's interesting whether or not it's right for businesses. But yeah, the stuff they do is really good. NitroPack, really great. Also, one of the only drawbacks I think with NitroPack is the pricing model is tied to the size of your website and the amount of traffic you're getting, which might be worth it for many businesses, and definitely is, but depending on your setup, might be quite expensive. So if that's not the right fit, WP Rocket is also surprisingly good. I know they've kind of simplified their product a lot and taken away a lot of the customization and checkboxes. So it's kind of good for everyone out the box, but it's still really powerful. If you want something that's a little bit more hands-on and a little bit more granular, W3TC, it's W3 Total Cache, has 1,000 checkboxes. And you can spend days going through and say, turn this bit on, but turn this bit off, and make this one red, and make this. You will break your website, but if you really want to finesse it, then that's really good. You might not need either of those if you have decent hosting with Redis installed. I really like Cloudways for hosting nowadays. Really nice, really cheap, really powerful, especially for WordPress hosting. And it comes with a bunch of performance and caching stuff built in. And lastly, I guess if you've got enough money to spend, if you have serious money to invest in your website and it's worth it for you, Surfbolt do incredible hosting. That's all really, really performance tuned and lightning fast, but not cheap. But you pay for what you get with that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely either NitroPack, WP Rocket, or W3TC, and then some good hosting, and that will solve most of your problems.
And do you do speed optimization for Shopify websites as well?
Such a nightmare. Yeah, but so much of the way Shopify works is quite deeply baked. There are some plugins that do some good work, but so much of it is just that kind of, is it big, is it slow resolution? So things like adding lazy loading to images and stuff. Shopify is hard to make truly fast in the way that you can with WordPress. But yeah, you can definitely make it better than it comes out the box, but it's always going to be
Any
bottleneck.
any favorite or any recommendations for plugin for our listeners there?
No, I'm about a year out of date on that, so I won't recommend any. But people, yeah, go do your own research. I'm afraid it's been a while since
Okay.
I've touched one.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about agency strategies and client relations. Of course, you've been a part of most of it as well. So in your experience, what's the biggest challenge agencies faces when it comes to delivering SEO results for clients, and how can they overcome it?
I think getting a shared definition of what results mean. I think there's still expectations from clients that they're going to hire an agency and then they're going to rank first for a bunch of keywords. And as we've touched on, so much of the work required, so much of the work required to do that is hard, authentic product market fit stuff, which is hard to do as an external agency, or it's going to be a to-do list of actions that they're not going to implement. So I think agreeing on what success looks like is the most important thing. And that might be helping to reduce technical debt. It might be addressing errors and issues in Google Search Console. It might be reducing declining performance rather than ranking first for everything overnight, and getting some sensible agreements on what that might be. Moving from position 40 to position 30 in the ranking might be more sensible and achievable, and then to iterate from there and to go a bit at a time. I see so many agencies still saying, yeah, we'll get 20 links a month and we'll give you 5 blog posts a month and you're going to rank top 3 for these keywords in 3 months. It's just not how it works. I mean, that kind of commodified deliverable is never going to hit those targets. And if it does, it's certainly not going to sustain them. So yeah, I think being a bit more mature about what good looks like. I think SEO as a channel is less and less close to the money now. It's hard to track performance. It's hard to directly attribute complex journeys, etc. I think we're at the point where we need to start to think more of SEO as a brand channel where we influence consumers and audiences and win hearts and minds and preference, rather than how many conversions did I get at the bottom of the funnel. And that has a very different set of metrics and expectations, and it comes much closer to conventional marketing and above the line stuff. So yeah, managing those expectations is a big deal.
Right. So how do you think agencies now should structure their SEO team and processes to stay ahead in this, of course, AI landscape?
So I think you don't need a basement full of 50 link builders anymore. I think that's not been the case for a while. I think you want to be hiring smart, talented people who are on their way up, who have experience in this evolving web, right? You want somebody who absolutely gets TikTok, somebody who's building an AI startup in their spare time on the weekends, somebody who codes Python for a laugh. You want people who are really in there doing clever stuff, and you want to bring them together and say, here are the kinds of problems the client has. How do we solve them? You don't want prescriptive deliverables. You don't want to be doing, here is your monthly report for your 10 keywords and your 5 articles. You need to be thinking, for this website, for this brand, for this audience, with this budget, how do we help? How do we try and convince Google that, not even convince, but how do we show to Google that they are a great resource and a great result? And that's going to be different in every single case. And that's super hard for agencies. It's not how agencies work, right? Agencies want to be going, how do we systemize? How do we build processes? I don't think that works very well at all anymore. There is room to do a kind of hybrid thing with we sell expertise and hours and consultancy, etc. But the really good agencies are going to be problem solvers. They're going to be parachuting in and saying, we're going to use all of this clever expertise we have and all of our breadth of experience. We've worked with 10 other bakery companies, or we've worked with 100 other car insurance companies. We understand this sector and we can see this gap and this opportunity. And here's the clever thing that we're going to work with you to do. And maybe you do that from inside the company, right? Maybe you send some of your team to work 2 days a week inside that organization so that they can talk to the customer service people, so they can understand the product, so that they can find out where the CEO, all of these things. And then you can start to really make a difference in a way that you can't if you just say, here is your audit. And of course, nobody actions the points, because it's hard. It's really hard.
Right. You work with, of course, various brands and agencies. What's the most common mistake you see agencies make in their SEO strategies or client communication?
I think a lot of them sell in a big dream and then don't always deliver it. Right? They go the big pitch and here's the magic campaign we're going to run, and here's all the great results we're going to get. And because of the challenges we've just kind of been through and how hard it is to do, that means inevitably that relationship only ever lasts 18 months. And so you get a year in, you've not really delivered the results, your contact is either frustrated and says, okay, we're going to give you 6 months to turn it around, or they've left, or they've gone on maternity leave, or somebody else has come in, they've moved on, and the new person you have to improve, you've got 6 months to prove yourself. Of course, you don't hit the targets because the targets were unrealistic. The targets were unreasonable. So there's two things you can do there, I think. One is in the pitch process and in those initial conversations, take more ownership of what success looks like. So you'll get an RFP document or something that says, here are the metrics we want. Challenge that. Don't be afraid to say, actually, we think we've got a better idea of what good looks like, what success can look like. Here's a more realistic set of expectations for your budget and resource and brand, etc. We think this is a better direction and strategy, and don't overcommit to something that's impossible just to win the pitch. And then also plan either for what on earth you're going to do at the 1 year mark when it turns out that they've not implemented anything you said to do, that they're inevitably unhappy, that the person's etc. Anticipate that and don't be surprised by it. So have a plan for how you say, okay, you've done this before. And the thing that agencies will forget is that these businesses are often doing this for the first time, or they're on this kind of churning mode. You can anticipate that at the end of the first year, of course, you're not going to hit the metrics. Of course, there's going to have been bottlenecks. Of course, the developers are awful. And you can have a plan for that, and you can resource for that. You can have strategies for that. You can work out, okay, maybe we need to make sure that this person is kept happier. Maybe we need to ring fence some resource for December so we can work twice as hard, do twice as much. You can anticipate all of those problems. So yeah, neither of those are great answers, but they're definitely things you can do.
Right. Now, let's talk a little bit about the future of SEO. I mean, how do you see Google approach to indexing evolving, and what should business be doing now to prepare for these changes if they are coming any?
Sure. I think the internet is now full, or at least it will be imminently, right? Because there are so many SEO agencies and individuals just churning out billions of these AI-generated articles. So Google has to be pickier about what they crawl and what they index. And as we've touched on, we already see this happening. Like their threshold for this is good enough gets higher and higher. So businesses need to be thinking, for every page that we add to our website, is this good enough to get indexed? Like if the internet is full and if Google had to choose to drop another URL to index this one, is it going to meet that threshold? Is it adding distinct value to the internet as a whole? I really like this concept, right? So the internet is a resource and a library. If you think about it, the people who go to university write dissertations on new areas of knowledge, synthesize, they research, they create new resources. That's how we need to think about web pages. And even these blog posts, service pages, product pages need to be new resources. They need to be more than just the same set of word soup that your competitors have. Like, no, there is no value in article. Like, I had an example in a conference talk recently where every dentist website on the planet has a page that says 8 tips to teeth whitening or 5 great ideas about college. They're all the same. And Google doesn't want or need any of them. And they don't add any value to the internet. They're not useful for users. They're just 3 paragraphs of the same words churned and churned again. So I think we need to stop doing that because they're never going to get indexed. And if they are indexed now, they're going to start dropping out. So do less. I think don't aim to make 1,000 pages that are average. Make 10 pages, which are great. And that's hard because it's different processes and resourcing, but agencies can definitely help there as well. So yeah, there is hope.
Okay. How do you envision the role of SEO specialists evolving within the agencies as AI and machine learning becomes more prevalent in the marketing? I know you said those basement link builders won't do, of course, but how do you otherwise see the roles evolving?
I think SEO for a while now has been quite an increasingly broad one, right? We all need to be code experts, we all need to be performance experts. We're now also security and accessibility experts and user experience experts and design. All of this will get wider and wider because what we are advocating is quality in structures and businesses that don't recognize that as a function. So we will stretch and we'll stretch and we'll stretch and we'll get thinner. I think where AI tooling can help us with that is to fill in some of that knowledge gap and expertise background. If we're going to go in and recommend clients do things, we're not security experts to the same level that security experts are security experts. But maybe we can find those intersects between, okay, the thing I'm talking about from an SEO perspective and the thing that you need from an accessibility or UX, those Venn diagrams of where the intersects. Things like ChatGPT can be really good for saying, what do I need to know? What don't I know that would be helpful? Can you see where this might be a risk? So for example, there are many scenarios where conversion rate optimization people will complain about SEO tactics. We'll say, we want some content on the page here, and they'll say that will harm conversion rate. And you go, okay, That's tough. We'll have more of those types of conversations. And ChatGPT can be really, you can line it up and anticipate it and say, I think that this person might have this objection. Or we're going to recommend this strategy for SEO. What do I need to do to think about accessibility? What are the risks? Where might this overlap? That kind of tell me what I don't know. Tell me what I need to know to do this. Really fun, really useful. And we're only going to get broader.
Okay. And what advice would you give to agency owners or SEO professional looking to stay innovative and competitive in the industry?
I think dabble. I think do stuff. I think spend less time theorizing and researching and wondering about whether this type of link's better than that type of link. Go and build stuff that's authentically valuable. Work out what you're passionate about and what you're an expert in, and publish, write, experiment, see what works, build a reputation, and build expertise, build knowledge. Again, like so much of what we do is going to be quality across a breadth of disciplines. A lot of that comes from getting hands-on. A lot of my expertise in web development and usability and all these other areas is from having built stuff and having got annoyed with the things I built and then torn it down and built it in a different way, and then having learned stuff along the way and revisit, and then going, okay, also security is quite a big deal because I'm going to get hacked. Okay, today I need to go learn about how servers work, and now I'm an expert in email deliverability, and you just keep adding on those skill sets, and that's much easier to do when you have something tangible to play with. So yeah, get something on the internet and grow it over time. Build something you love.
So now, very quickly, we're just about to wrap up. We just got 3 minutes. So what are your favorite SEO tools which are not very common in the world for everyday use?
That's interesting. I'm a big fan of Systrix as a kind of rank tracking analysis platform. German hasn't really hit the market elsewhere really good. What else? I mentioned Classy Schema for schema analysis. That's really good. What else? What else do I like? What do I use? What's in my toolbox? Let's have a look. I've recently started, excuse me, using Cursor.ai, which is a coding environment.
Yes.
Super cool, really, really cool, really powerful for just, you don't have to be a developer. You can just describe what you want and say, I want a program or piece of software that does these things. I want a Chrome extension that does these things. I have this problem with whatever. And it just goes, brr, here's your files, here's your code, which means non-developers can solve problems really easily. Other stuff I like, Sitebulb is really good as an alternative to Screaming Frog. I'm sure people have come across that, and that's pretty awesome. And that's probably about it. I don't use a lot of tools. I spend a lot of time in Google's, in Chrome's developer tools. So things like the network tab there we mentioned, also the sources tab and applications tab, performance tab in there, really powerful for saying, how does this website work and what's it doing? And then you can pull that apart, reverse engineer it, make things better, what's going on. Yeah, you playing Chrome. Chrome's a good tool.
Okay. And are there any resources or tool you would recommend for agencies looking to level up their SEO games besides these, or these will be good enough?
I would go check out web.dev. It's Google's sponsored kind of guide to what does best practice for the web look like. And a lot of it is quite technical, but huge chunks of it are also about just what does best practice look like for things like accessibility and image optimization and video and UX and other areas. It's really good. There's links out from there to all sorts of other things. It's a good kind of curated knowledge hub for what does good look like on the internet, whether you've built a React single page act monstrosity or whether you're using WordPress or whatever. But yeah, it's really nice for going, what don't we know about best practices?
Okay. Okay. And any other useful resources you like users to go to? Any go-to resources where you keep yourself updated in the SEO industry?
I'm still bouncing between Twitter now, X, and Threads. It feels like, yeah, I need to get off X eventually, but there's not enough people on Threads yet. I subscribe to a whole bunch of newsletters. I'm sure it's the fairly common ones, things like Aleda's. There's what's the marketing one? I forgot what it's called. A bunch of kind of marketing and tech in marketing newsletters, which I'm just opening my inbox and I can find very quickly, maybe. Growth Memo, Kevin Indiggs is really good. A few others. Yeah, I'm going to, what's that other? Oh, TLDR Marketing, TLDR Web Dev, they're a really good series. See, I spend a chunk of time every morning just reading through my inbox, cherry picking articles and stuff. Again, like so much of what we do is so broad that it's worth subscribing to a few of those TLDR newsletters, and then you pick out all the latest information on what's happening. They're really good.
Okay, that's interesting. And Jono, this has been an incredible conversation. Before we wrap up, what final piece of advice would you give to business navigating the evolving landscape of SEO and digital marketing for now and 2025?
Wow, it's a big question, isn't it? Go make things better. Don't be afraid of making 100 small improvements. I think we get caught up so much in grand strategy and grand vision and researching and worrying about who's going to think what about what tactics. People very rarely go, that's a broken link, I'll fix that. Or that image is a bit big, let's make it smaller. Or that font's a bit weird. Like, go in and make those changes and make them tomorrow and the next day and the next day. That's how you win. Like, so much of SEO is just incremental improvements that then make your website better than your competitors. Yeah, do that. Don't be afraid to iterate incrementally.
Absolutely right. And thank you so much for your time and insights, Jono. For our listeners who want to stay connected with you or dive deeper into your work, where can they?
Thank you. I'm at jonoalderson.com or at Jono Alderson on X, LinkedIn, Facebook, various other places. Google me, I should. If I don't show up when you Google me, I've not done my job right. So yeah, try that. But thank you so much. This was lovely.
Okay. Thank you again, Jono, and thanks to our listener for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the Agency Insider podcast, a show for more conversations with marketing leaders. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you.